really am excited to talk to you today. I know we're going to get into some good stuff. I'll kind of let you introduce yourself and preface the conversation, and then we can go from there.
All right. Yeah. And Cody, thank you for thank you for having me on. This is actually one of the probably the second podcast that I've been on. Really excited for these kinds of conversations. So my name is Connie Davis. I live here in Florida, and I actually have a few different hats that I wear. I'm a community thought leader for an organization called Prime Ledger. I do business development for them. That means that I'm bringing communities on a journey for learning all things blockchain and digital assets. It's a tough conversation, but I also run a nonprofit called Inspire World Foundation. And that is a community of fintech executives, believe it or not, that stepped away from corporate and said, we want to help solve some of the economic and financial systems abuse for vulnerable populations. So I run the spectrum of really, really impoverished people to really, really wealthy kind of individuals that are learning to try to pivot their companies into the future of money movement. So I spent 30 years roughly in the banking and payments traditional space, which is what called TradFi, and literally built the systems that you guys are using to, you swipe your card, you tap your card, you tap your phone. I've been part of those technical evolutions of financial services for the last 30 years. So
Hmm.
I've seen a number of different changes in how we move money and why we move money. And it's just kind of become this uh, unique way of explaining commerce for me.
Okay. So that's a really interesting story. So just right out of the gate, man, I'm curious about this. This podcast. I guess the theme is the Pure Wisdom podcast is about learning and wisdom and that kind of thing. Um, so I'm just curious. You work with people sort of who it sounds like all over the spectrum as far as finance goes.
Mhm.
Maybe people who are living in in wealth, and then maybe people on the very opposite end of that.
Mhm.
Is it okay? So
You
if
say.
if you had to, what do you think? Because I know you've mentioned also to like an emotional aspect of it, emotional intelligence aspect of this, and I think this is a really good way to connect these two. What do you think it is? So the people that are maybe like really wealthy, like just on average for the average person, what is it? What maybe traits do they have that is really beneficial for them for building that wealth? And then I guess the other question would be for people who are not on the opposite end of that, what do they have? What traits do they have that's like really hurting them as far as their finance goes?
It's a really interesting question because I look at wealth as a subjective definition. Everybody has a different definition, and they separate wealth from riches, right?
Mm,
Material riches, social relationship riches, material goods, and things that we have around us. And then there's the real deep, intentional meaning of how is it and what is it that I have around me or inside of me to feel wealthy. And it's really interesting to have that conversation with people from a cultural perspective, a gender perspective, and also based on the environment. What country do you live in? What are the principles of that country and the environmental, societal type of definitions or characters that we play? And so that's where I think the emotional work that I've done, so certified as a love and authenticity practitioner 5 years ago. I'm also certified in temperament. Temperament is the core of the human being's operating design. So nobody teaches us to be human, right, Cody?
mhm,
Somebody sits down and says, "Hey, Cody, you're going to be, this type of a human." We're all born as babies, and we
right.
all have a design within us that is kind of the template for what we start with. And then from there, our parents and our influencers influence what our beliefs are when it comes to money. We all have a money story. We all started out with a certain number of exposure experiences around money, and some people have more access to it and some people don't. So
Mhm.
environment matters, cultural conditioning matters, experiences with money matter. And so as we start thinking about our early money stories, this is what's really getting interesting as we start talking about the psychology of money. There's a book on that. There's, belief systems around money. And as a financial technologist, for me, it's been watching people move money using technology my entire career. But there's always a very emotional element to moving money, and especially when they're blocked from being able to
Hmm.
move money. I've been a bank teller. I've seen those experiences come into the branches, and people get very irate when there's rules and
Yep.
limitations to move their money.
Yeah. Man, that's such a good point. I think that we can find out a lot about ourselves and about other people when money is involved, I feel like. You know,
Yes.
and
Yes.
would you agree that, because I've had this conversation kind of before, on and off the podcast, would you agree that if we are as children maybe taught to fear money, which is different from budgeting? I mean, I think learning how to budget is different from maybe fearing money or not having enough or whatever it might be, whatever the fear might be. Do you think that would be something that we like carry into our adult lives and it really shapes our financial future, that fear of money? Well, and when I say fear, I guess it's like, you know, I think there's a belief that some people have that, if someone's wealthy, they got it by a means that wasn't moral, or, they cheated somebody to get there or whatever. That seems to be and that's not a, not everybody has that belief, but there is a small portion of people who seem to think that. And then it's like that. I think people fear money because they fear that if they it's easy for us to think about the fear of failure, but it's also the fear of success. Like, if we have the success, can we maintain that? Like, you hear people say that it's a lot easier to keep money versus make money, as at least what people say, anyways. It's a
Yeah.
lot easier. What do they say? It's a lot easier to stay a millionaire than become a millionaire, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Anyway, this fear about money that we have, whatever it might be, that we either learn or it was instilled in us or whatever. What do you think about that? I mean, because like, how do we even overcome that? Because it is something to be aware of, like budgeting, being aware of this stuff. But I think that's different from the fear, of whatever it might be.
So let's go a little bit deeper than that. What is fear and where does it come from? So, and how do we find ourselves to be afraid of a tool? Because as a technologist, I believe money is a tool.
Hmm.
Money is something that we exchange to get something that we want. And fear comes from some deep rooted emotion that says, I can't have, can't reach, can't achieve, and I'm afraid of something, right? And that fear is also subjective. That's why I believe money is an extension of ourselves. And if it's an extension of what we're trying to achieve, and I did a huge whiteboard and a master kind of like mind map of all of the places, if you think about it, that you use money to achieve or reach or acquire something. A feeling comes with that acquisition. You don't just go out and buy a hamburger because you want a hamburger. You're hungry. So there's a deeper rooted need that's actually there in the human being. And so that gets to our temperament and our deep emotional needs. And what are we using money as a tool to acquire?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good, because I think when you see it as a tool or as a resource, I think it changes, you
Yeah.
know, I think I mean, it does change how you see it and how you view it and how, I guess, you maybe use it if it's a tool.
Yeah, and I'll just give you an example. So a couple of years ago, I was teaching eighth and ninth graders, excuse me, 8 and 9 year olds in elementary school for the Great American Teach-In. The
Hmm.
question was, can you come in and talk about the history of money? The kids, when you start asking them, where does money come from? And these are 8 and 9 year olds in modern days where digital wallets and mobile banking and all of the things that they see their parents doing, all tools, all of those kids were like, it comes off my mom and dad's debit card. Okay, that's great. But where does money come from? How
Hmm.
does their mom and dad get it? Well, they go to work. Well, what happens when they go to work? And the kids you start backing them into what is it that your parents are doing to get money? What does money do for you when they have money? And what happens when they don't have money? And also, what came up was the kids know how agitated their parents get when there's fraud on their debit card, or something happens at the bank or at the financial institution, and they're trying to get money out so that they can go do a thing, that the kids are excited about doing the thing, and then they can't reach the thing, right? So those are all emotions, and those are conditional based on what's happening with these tools and the permission and the access that we have to money systems, because the system is what allows us to move through life, and sometimes
Hmm.
we're blocked by that. So I think of that story often because it gets to the root of the emotion of what's happening with the money systems. And this is why I've been on this journey of understanding financial technology, because it absolutely affects the human being journey.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking about, like, it seems to be that there's, like, an emotional it's almost like there's an emotional I don't wanna say attachment to money, but, like, an emotional, what would you say, stimulus maybe from money because it's like, unfortunately, I think a lot of people, and this is really tricky for me because I'm in the entrepreneurship space, and as a business, like, money is very important, like, money is a, resource is very important. But it's like I think a lot of us we to some degree or another see our either our personal value or the value or of our business or whatever tied to how much money we have or how much money we make or whatever. And so and obviously I don't think that's the way to look at it. I think it is an important tool like you said, but it's not it's I don't think we should determine our value or self-worth from that. But then it's like it goes even farther than that because I mean how many marriages the core problem or the core argument is like about money, or at least a common argument in marriages. I feel like in most relationships or some
Mhm.
relationships, but it's like we have so much emotional involvement in this. And I mean, I can't like it's like you said, like if you have kids and you want to do something with them, you have to have money to make that happen. And it's like it goes back to the fear thing. Well, if we don't have enough money, we can't survive. And it's like there's just all kinds of different emotions all over the spectrum that are involved in this. Um, I mean, I think the tricky thing, the question I'm asking myself is like, how do we individually and as a society like separate that and exist to where this thing and I'm sure we're going to talk about this thing that really isn't even real is only real because somebody else gave it a value or whatever. When I
That's
say
right.
somebody, the government gave it value. Like, how do we exist in this sort of I don't want to say matrix, but it kind of is a matrix, man, because like this thing has value that was like given out from an outside source. And it's not like gold or silver. And I don't know if you get involved in that or not, but it's not like something that actually has value outside of the value that it was given from this institution. So I don't know. It's just like it's crazy. Yeah, just to go back to your point, there's so much. I guess that's how I would say it: emotional involvement, like emotional stimulus or
There
stimuli from different
There
things.
is, and look at the process you just went through for yourself, trying to figure out what money is and how you access money, and you got all the thoughts and the beliefs about the money systems coming up that are so deep rooted that we don't even really think about them. I think we take them for granted. But let's go back to the temperament, because the temperament is a psychosocial type of awareness of how are you designed to handle, tools, and how do you make decisions, and how do you express yourself as you're making those decisions. And one of the as one of the certified temperament analysts for Dr. John Wayne Worley identified this deep rooted temperament as a psychologist to get people out of his office, and as part of the team that he's invested in, and said, this is what temperament actually is, Connie, and how we can actually apply it to understanding the human being, first starting with ourselves, is when you understand yourself, then you know how you're going to express and ripple into the community and the household around you. When you don't understand how you're emotionally designed and wired, it's very difficult. And you can even confuse yourself when you don't know what that is. That's why I said, as babies, nobody sat us down and said, you're this little girl and you're designed this way. We find it out through contrast experiences.
Mhm.
Contrast and experiences with money is part of that journey. So when we can't reach something, because, and I'll share a personal story with me. When I was about probably 10, my parents, I grew up in a very low income family. And my mom stayed home. She was a stay-at-home mom. It was my sister and I. My dad was a welder, blue collar worker. And in California, meager upbringing, lots of love, lots of family activities where we had to figure out ways to do things that didn't cost money. So we spent a lot of time camping, we spent a lot of time out in the nature, and there was Christmas and birthdays, and that was pretty much it, right? And I remember this experience with money, having very little as a child. Birthdays was a big deal, but there was a day when I had actually this crate. I needed some chapstick, but my mom didn't have money for it, and I actually stole it at the store because
Mm,
I had this. I need this, and it's driving home the point of I have a need, and I'm
right.
willing to do something to acquire something. But that went back and against the principles of my family of you don't use, you don't steal because money is not meant to be stolen. A product is a piece, a conversion of money, right? If you don't
Mhm.
have money, you can't acquire it. And why do I say that is because when you look at the underserved communities, the vulnerable populations, the second chance, the people that end up in jail because they've created some kind of a criminal enterprise to provide for their family, they still have a need. They still have a need to put food on the table, or they're trying to acquire something and their needs are not being met. And they used money as a weapon instead of a tool.
Mm, yeah, man, that's such a good point. Um, I don't know. The I mean, I'm kinda stunned by that because that's actually a really good way to look at it as a tool or a weapon. I mean, there's a lot of things that can be used that way, like a shield. You hear it like a shield or a sword. Like martial arts is like that. It can be
Yeah,
a shield or a sword, you
that's
know.
right.
Uh, but I mean, when you put it in that perspective, like they're just trying to fulfill that need or survive, it really changes the perspective of it. Not saying it is right or wrong. I mean, I'm just saying what it is a need that's was trying to be met.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I don't know. It's like it seems like okay, so this is my thing about this. Like we're talking about like these needs and these emotional and like all this stuff. We're talking about the fact that this thing is really not real. And I think one of the things that shows you that is like the cost of living. Like so where I'm at in South Carolina, a salary of $100,000 a year is not the same thing as it is in like New York City or
Yeah.
like probably where we're in some places in California. Like it's not the same thing, and so it's like I understand there's like the logistics, the economics. I understand that there's different parts of the world, but like to a certain degree, how does that even make sense? I get the logistic stuff, but then you have something like crypto, and I guess we'll get into this in a little bit, but crypto, which is like so much I it scares me how much I don't understand about crypto because it seems to be so variable. Like there's so much that you just that is like what my understanding of it is the value comes from almost the hype about the cryptocurrency, like that coin. You see what I'm saying? And I could be wrong about that. And I guess if I am, you'll let me know. But it's like Bitcoin. Like Bitcoin became a thing because it was like so big, or at least this is my understanding of crypto. I could be completely wrong, but like Bitcoin was one of the first big ones. And so it came out as this thing. It was whatever it was, to buy it or whatever. And then everybody sort of started buying it. And just like a normal stock, it went up because of the demand, I guess, or the investment in that thing or something like that. And now it's like $60,000 or 70,000, whatever it is for I guess a coin or whatever. I think it got up to 120 or something like that. Anyway, my that's one of the reasons I want to talk to you. Is my understanding of crypto is so like not even elementary. It's before elementary. Um, Anyway, there's just so much variability, and it really kinda like I mean, I don't know. I'm not saying money like fiat paper money is simple, but it's like crypto just seems to be more advanced, and I don't understand it, and it really bothers me.
And you're not alone, right? So, and Cody, please know that when I say that I've been through a number of these types of conversations where individuals are just trying to wrap their mind around it. And when I mean wrap their mind around it, it's I have this level of understanding about what I'm used to and what I'm comfortable with, and that's an emotion. and I have a fair amount of knowledge of the system that's moving my money and how I receive it and how I move it, right? And the instructions that I give digitally to move money around. Money is still a tool. So whether it's in fiat dollars or it's in Bitcoin or a cryptocurrency, it's still a tool. And it's still a tool to move value or to exchange value at the core of what it is between human beings, right? So we're producers, we're creators. You're a creator, I'm a creator. We are entrepreneurs. We're working out to solve a problem, to share and exchange our value that comes from deep inside of here and the gifts that we were given. We are the asset that's trading value in the community, in the marketplace, right? And if you think about the history of money, and I'm going to get to your question about crypto, but I'm going to take you through this contextual background because it's really important for your audience, because so many people are trying to wrap their mind around this new system that's coming in, and it's already here. However, if we can't recall why we created marketplaces to exchange our value and to believe that we have that value inside of ourselves, we form a business, but that business is nothing without us putting the effort into it, right? So that value comes from us, our efforts, our energy, our knowledge, our wisdom, and we exchange that with our customers, with our clients. And the only way that we can get compensated for that exchange is using the money systems that have been designed for decades, generations. And it goes all the way back to the gold and silver coins that used to be exchanged as a medium of exchange. In the commodity days, in the traders posts, way back, it was furs and salt and spices and animals even. Or if I needed vegetables, I'd go and trade for some chicken. But that, as we grew outwards, we needed to find a more portable way of exchange. And so that's where the fiat dollar comes from, right? It was an IOU. It was, my gold's back in my vault in New York City. I'm exploring out in the Wild West for California as a traveler, and I'm going to write you an IOU, put it in the bank vault, and then when I bring the gold, I will correct that IOU. That's what fiat money is. And so what fiat money is, though, is it doesn't represent us as the source and store of value because governments have been able to print it freely. They're
Right.
the printing press. So Bitcoin was introduced in 2008 to offset and say, we need to have some accountability to end the printing press and have something real and measurable, immutable, and trackable that's based on effort. And the effort for Bitcoin was the miners. It was the computer programmers, the developers that said, we're going to go to work on this project, this protocol, and we're going to create this cryptography, meaning a bunch of zeros and ones with some processing capability to make it go fast and the computers to speed up to solve a problem, a mathematical problem. And as proof of that solution and that reward for the miner, mining that math problem, they get to get a little bit of Bitcoin as their reward, right? So it's no
Right.
different than what we're doing as individual creators. It's just now we have a cryptographic system with transparent ledgers. So how many times do you actually record your stuff in your debit card on a paper checkbook anymore? Do you do that?
No.
No, you use the digital ledger attached to your digital banking app, right?
Hmm.
That's a centralized ledger. Bitcoiners rely on the public ledger. And so it's an immutable ledger that everybody can look at. But I bet you if you go to your bank or credit union and say, "Hey, can I look at your ledger?" They're going to look at you like you're crazy. They're going to say, "Here, you get your slice of the ledger in your phone. And if you need something, you got to pay for statements for me to go print them out and get you the history."
Hmm.
So that's what I'm getting at as far as why the background and the history matters and the way that we see our value and exchange our value, because the tool that we're using it comes in different forms.
Hmm.
Money is, fiat here in the US, an our US dollar, and there's other countries that have their fiat money and it's
Right.
paper money and it's a printing press from their centralized governments. And Bitcoin was created to give you an alternative to that. And that's what the mission, that's where it all started.
So, and I do understand that, and I think my sort of my issue with maybe fully processing that is like I get the fiat system, was an IOU for gold and silver. Like I get, if I were to buy something from you, I didn't have the gold and silver with me, I could give you that as a IOU or whatever. I get that because that's linked to the gold and silver. However, like what I don't understand, I understand the barter, even that system too, but I don't. So like with Bitcoin, it's like if or any crypto, it's like this thing. So if the government, I think the government is a big enough institution to back the fiat dollar, regardless of how much faith we might have left in it. That it backs the fiat currency system because it's a big enough institution to do that. And it says, okay, yeah, you have a dollar that's worth this much. You can do these things with it. But it's like Bitcoin. I mean, what I know you have to put money into it to buy it, but it's like what value is that linked to other than whatever institution or like whatever gives that value? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So like,
About the global network of people that have swapped out currency. It could have been a global currency from another country, doesn't have to just
mhm,
be US, swapping out their fiat dollar and converting it into Bitcoin to buy it so that
okay,
they could buy whatever Bitcoins were mined and made available to the open market. That's
okay,
where you're almost, you're converting currencies. No different than you travel to another country, you swap out to their currency. You're saying, I'm going to, and the phrase is mine fiat, buy Bitcoin. So as
right,
Bitcoin is mined by the miners and in across the network, they make those available for purchase, right, in a marketplace, in a centralized exchange, or between
okay,
Bitcoiners. They can exchange them between.
okay. So would I be accurate in saying that it's the conversion of that fiat and the investment into Bitcoin which gives it the value?
Yes, it's a
Okay.
belief system, just like the fiat system.
All right. So I all right, so if that's true, does that mean that the more people who convert their fiat into crypto and the more people who invest, does that mean that the value will go down? Because like with the paper money system, the fiat money system, if the more they print, the value of it goes down because there's more of it. So is like would the same thing apply to crypto? Like the more people who get involved, would it just sort of decline the value over time? I mean,
It comes down to supply. So everything is a supply and demand, and Bitcoin's tokenomics, if you will, the economics of Bitcoin is all about the limited supply. There will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and
okay.
the incentive to mine and the reward system and the network that grows as adoption grows, we're all vying for that 21 million coins, right? So if there's only ever 21 million, it's like saying the entire globe, you're only going to have a certain amount of gold, right? You're
Right.
only going to have a certain amount of gold and silver that can be mined out of the earth. Same principle. So
Okay.
as the scarcity, what do humans do when there's not enough toilet paper? What did we see in 2020,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah.
so if you think about that type of an emotional reaction, and this is why it's really important to tie money and emotions and blockchain and Bitcoin together, because that emotional scarcity creates a survival response in our brain. And that survival response is going to say, you better go get some. You're going to have FOMO, fear of missing out. And we
Mm,
see that in the trading space of blockchain and cryptocurrencies all the time. And that's where the speculations come from. Like this token's going to trade higher and this one's down and this one. That's creating this emotional dopamine and serotonin response and cortisol in our systems. It's changing our nervous system chemistry.
mhm.
And so we have to be really cognizant and aware of that happening over a tool.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that and I agree. And that's actually a pretty good point because I think, it's so similar to like my understanding of crypto and the stock market and everything is so similar to gambling. It's like a gamble. Everything that you do is a gamble. And I understand that's thrilling for some people. And I get that. But I think sort of what might keep a lot of people from, and I keep referring to this as investing, like investing in crypto. That might not be the right term to use. Maybe it might be um, I don't know, purchasing crypto?
It depends on what you're doing. It's subjective. It's why are you purchasing cryptocurrencies? What are you doing with them? Are you using them as an investment to no different than you would buy stock in a company?
Hmm.
Because the blockchain protocols that are out there, or the blockchains, the layer ones, those are individual projects. They are projects that people believe in. They're building something. What are the developers building? What is their white paper? What's their mission? How are they going to build real community around those projects? What is those projects going to do in the world? Who are they going to serve? What companies are going to be partners with that blockchain?
Okay, that makes sense. So I think one thing that might keep people from maybe investing, I think that's what probably the majority of people would try to do in crypto is invest. Um, I think what might turn people off from that is like you can't really. I mean, you can see an analysis on a screen, but you can't really see. Like if you go to the stock market, and you invest in Apple, like you
Mhm.
can see Apple. Like Apple's a tangible company, you can see everything, but like you can't really, unless it's like there might be physical coins for this stuff. I don't know, but I think it's all digital, right?
All
It,
digital.
yeah, so let's like you can't really see except like whatever's on the digital screen. And I think that's a little bit different from like stocks because you can actually see the physical company that you're, quote unquote investing in.
Yeah, so
Um,
I mean, but look at it. I look at it this way, and I probably have a very warped sense of humor on this, but we've already made money invisible. It's invisible. Our
yeah.
kids' money comes off of our debit cards, right, from the parents. So we're not seeing it already. It's in a centralized fiat ledger. And what we're experiencing, though, and that is creating emotion, is that our purchase power is being lost. It's being
Mm,
shriveled up. It's low, it's lessening, it's reducing. And the challenge with that is we feel the price increases. We're like, what the heck? I used to spend 20 bucks on something, and now that 20 bucks gets me half of that. Right. And that is inflation. And that is the impact and the ripple effect of creating too much money and printing money without having the reserves in the background. And so that's where I think a lot of the distrust and the curiosity, intellectual curiosity about blockchain and cryptocurrencies is coming from. Is it's coming from a place of need that scarce I'm paying more. That means my effort and my purchasing power is being reduced by something that I can't see and touch.
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. But I think that investment sort of mindset is just one piece of it because I know there's a lot of people who, want to buy it so that if the fiat crashes or whatever, and we convert to crypto, that they have. I mean, it's hard to think about this on a global scale, but like if the fiat system were to go away, something would have to replace it. Like you can't just that's just not going to go away. And I don't see the world's governments ever getting involved in crypto at a unified thing because they can't. I don't think they can control it the way they can the fiat system. But
But yeah.
but I feel like something would have to change that. But so there's a portion of people who want to invest, and let's say like they want to find a cryptocurrency that's maybe on the low end, it's going to rise up, and obviously they grow their money. But there's also people who want to sort of have a reserve of it, like gold and silver. Like people want to have gold and silver so they can have a tangible thing if the dollar loses its value or whatever. So, but the thing is though, like Bitcoin, first of all, what is 60,000 for a coin or something like that? 60 something $1,000, I think is what it is. So
Today,
does
yeah.
that mean, that means if you buy a Bitcoin, like one single coin is 60 something $1,000? Is
You
that
can
what
buy
that means?
segments of it. You can do something called dollar cost averaging, and you're betting on the scarcity of Bitcoin going up over time. So you're going to buy what you can today. That's what we call get off zero. Have at least a little bit. You can buy $5 of Bitcoin if you want to. It's
Okay.
fractionalized, the ability to buy, but you can't buy half of a dollar, right? You don't, unless you're going to hold coin. So you get 50
Hmm.
cents, right? So same principle applies here. But the dollar, if I were to say, I'm going to hand you a dollar and you're going to hold on to that, with the promise of being able to spend and get the same amount of a dollar versus being able to get the same amount of Bitcoin, or using Bitcoin in the future, what would you choose based
Well,
on the history?
I'm thinking about me personally, and this ties in the emotional aspect of this. I'm thinking about, and I want to use the word maybe hope or faith. Like I'm thinking that like at least Bitcoin has the option to go up. I don't ever see the dollar going up in value from what it is now. It seems like it's been a continuous decline from 1913 or whatever it was that they brought it in. But it's like I don't see the dollar like ever. You mentioned inflation. It's never going to go up in value. I feel like if anything, it's going to go down.
But the dollar is a unit of account. It's a unit of measurement. So what we need to draw a parallel here to help you with, and this is where most individuals get stuck as they start thinking about this, is the volatility of Bitcoin. How much can I handle? Right? Because that's
Mhm.
subjective. Some of us need that stability and trust and safety, so that we feel safe in what we're investing in. Our energy, our time, our effort is converted from work hours into fiat today so that we can acquire the things that we talked about at the beginning of the show, the experiences, right? And the things for our family and the things for our life to have an enjoyable life. And the dollar is eroding in that ability to do that. And so to help with the volatility of Bitcoin, that's where the governments are coming out with stable coins. Stable to us means flat, right? No
Mhm.
volatility. So the stable coins will be the payments equivalent and new system of the digital dollar. The digital dollar will be replaced, is being replaced by the dollar or by the stable coin. And then the stable coins have to be ushered in into the local and national regional governments, country governments as well. Every country is looking at this because we've already digitized the dollar.
Mhm.
We already have a centralized ledger. We've all experienced inflation and the loss of purchase power, right? What we acquire for that unit of account of one is not the same level of volume as what we used to get 10 years ago, right? So that's what we're really talking about at the core of what you're trying to you're grappling with, trying to explain and articulate.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think I'm coming to the conclusion this is obviously gonna take some more thought because I I
It's,
can't get to this conclusion right here.
you're drinking
Um,
from a fire hose right now and you're doing awesome, but
yeah.
you're not the only one having this conversation with themselves, and it goes really deep and it gets into the depth of our relationship with money and what we use it for.
Yeah, I think, well, you mentioned it not being real. I looked this up a couple weeks ago. I don't know the exact number on this, but I think it's like 92 or 93% of the world's of the dollar is digital. It's numbers in a bank, on a screen or whatever.
Yeah.
Which means if we all went to the bank at the same time to try to get our money out, we could only get like 7 or 8% of our money. And if you tell people that, it's like, do you know, I think that actually I'm not certain on this. I think that actually happened one time in the 30s or 40s. Like the banks didn't have enough money to give everybody.
Mhm. Yeah, it's called a
And
bank run. It's a depression. It was in the depression. It was that emotion of scarcity overtook the people. They were scarce on supplies. The money wasn't circulating, and everybody, just like toilet paper, had to go acquire the toilet paper for whatever reason. That panic set in,
mhm,
right? So and that has to do with what is liquid assets that we can actually liquidate and exchange with one another to acquire something else. And so you have to think about the why that would happen. Why would you go to the bank and take all of your money out? What would cause you to need to do that?
mhm,
That's what the
yeah,
government's trying to do now, is to, instead of creating that panic, and you have to, kudos to them for seeing this and planning, is, if we can convert that dollar into a more transparent, immutable system so that
mhm,
we don't lose the faith and the belief of the people, then we can what do you call that? What's the word I'm thinking about? Smooth out the transition from, instead of thinking, oh my gosh, we're going to go to this volatile environment of Bitcoin, even though the Bitcoiners would love us to do that and love to, and that's what Bitcoin was created to be, that means we're stepping away from everything that we've known. And so they're trying to help us navigate the tide of change. And I talk about this all the time, navigate the changing systems using the stablecoin and keeping the infrastructure that we're all used to, going to the bank, going into the branch, using our mobile phone to check our balances, and keeping that environment as stable as possible. And
hmm.
that's what the stable coins will do for us.
So, man, there's so much we can talk about. I want to make sure we have time. I do have a couple things I want to talk to you about. And this is just, I can't believe we've been talking for 40 minutes already. Uh, I think this is maybe a good transition to this. You're talking about bringing your money out. So I know somebody who's in a situation right now where this person, I think, I don't know, invested in cryptocurrency or something along the lines. I think there was a broker involved. They went through a broker. Um, my understanding is that they have a some sort of analytics that shows what their I guess their balance is. It has a specific number on there. Now, whether or not that's, I mean, I don't know if that means that's this number transferred into US. I mean, I don't know. I know that the currency that's on the screen is US dollars. So the person, they try to get some money out of that account. And
Mhm.
it's been like such a pain, man, for like they had to go through all kinds of verification. And it got to the point where I was like, okay, is this an authentic thing? Like, is this some sort of scam? Because if you tell me that I give you some money and it grows into this much and I can't get this out of this, like what's going on with this? You know what I mean? Like that's my first thought about that.
Mhm.
So I guess the question would be, is that a red flag if somebody's in this situation? Because they say it's designed to keep your money in, like it's not designed to pull it. It's not like a bank account. However, if you again, if you tell me it's growing and you say that that's what I'm making off this, and look, I understand, the taxes and everything. I get all that stuff, but like I don't think that's what we're talking about here. It seems like it's not. It's almost like it's not possible to even get that money out of your account. It seems like.
It sounds like one, and without having the specifics of the platform or the name of the technology or the entity that they've, partnered with to pull some money into, is that they invested in some kind of a pool like a liquidity pool, and there was a certain percentage of returns that was, shared with them that made them feel, excited enough, and I'm going to use all the emotional words here,
Yeah.
feel excited enough to convert and move funds over. So, but without understanding the terms and conditions or what they were getting involved in, that is why we're trying to teach the essentials of this new decentralized world of finance, because there's very different things that are happening. Some things are valid, some things are not. It's been a little bit of a wild west, and that's why there's regulation and legislation coming in to create the standards for the protocols so that we have more people doing the same things, right? Where you're not
Mm.
guessing and you're not second guessing somebody's activities thinking that there was a scam. And the banking industry has done many, many decades of legislation and rulemaking to create those standards so that we had trust. That's why we have FDIC insurance. That's why we have NCUA for credit unions. Is there is a level of guarantee that your assets are protected up to a certain amount. Okay, that's what the industry, the centralized industry, has done for us. So we can't take that for granted. But when we decide to kind of leave that centralized system and go out into the digital Wild West, then we
Mm.
need to understand and take responsibility for what did we sign up for? Did we understand it? Is it a staking pool? And a staking means I'm committing to allowing you to build with my liquidity. Think of it as a crowdsource type thing, or you're just participating and pooling dollars to help create a return in a collective pool so that everybody benefits.
Mm.
There are those types of things out there. Was there clear communication? Don't know. Were they given terms and conditions and explained how this would work? Don't know. So
Right.
those are things that we have to take responsibility for when we decide to put our dollars into something else.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I don't know the specifics on that. I don't know the details. Like I said, I know that the person put in a certain amount, and I mean on screen it looks like they're doing very well with it. But I mean it's actually to the point where I'm like, okay, this is what you put in and this is what it says. I'm not sure about that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So even with like I don't know what the actual currency is. I think Bitcoin's involved. I'm not sure the actual details of it, but I'm like, okay, you're saying this kind of return on this. I'm not really sure about that. And now that you can't get the money out, I mean, it sounds like it might be a pull situation.
Mhm.
Um, but
Yeah,
again,
staking pool, a liquidity pool, without knowing the specifics. It's hard. I mean, usually Bitcoin doesn't go that way unless they're, doing some kind of a fund. But then now the regulations are all cracking down on some of those. So there's a lot of speculation here. And
Mhm.
it really comes down to taking responsibility to make sure that you understand what you're doing. It's not the same regulated system in the centralized environment that we're used to. There are centralized platforms that can absolutely help educate, but we still have to take responsibility to make sure we understand what we're doing. Otherwise, we can't run around and go, they stole my stuff when I gave permission and then didn't really understand what I was doing. So
Mhm.
that's why we need more education. And that's what I advocate for in my local community, and looking for organizations that are ready to partner to bring that type of education to their communities.
Um, eh, I've noticed that, so I think it's crypto.com, I think is like is one that I've been to, and it seems like there's a way for people to, I don't want to say bet, but it's kind of is what it is. It's like bet against crypto or against like whatever like the coins are. At least that's my understanding. I'm not saying that's what it is. At least that's what it looks like. Which opens up a whole nother door of like this whole thing that we've been talking about. Like, not only can you invest in this thing or, purchase it or convert it or whatever, but you can also, seems like, bet against it, whether it's going to do well or not. And that
Yeah.
seems like a whole nother avenue.
It is a whole nother avenue, but think about it this way. If this is a decentralized community of different projects, and I like
Mhm.
to represent it as projects because every token that's been introduced and put into those exchanges like crypto.com or Coinbase, and those tokens have people behind them that are trying to do a thing. What is it that they're trying to do? Think of it as a mini representation of a small micro business that's trying to grow into a bigger business. It's just on the blockchain. And so a lot of those developers are trying to build a thing, they're trying to create a community, and they want that community to be invested in through this token. And is that token a true asset, or is it a utility token? And that's what the SEC and the CFTC in the US are all kind of trying to standardize now. They're trying to figure out what is a security token that's actually like a reserve asset, like Bitcoin, like Ethereum, things like that that are actually security tokens. And what are utility tokens, meaning you're going to get something by participating in a community. And
Mhm.
there's a very big difference. And understanding what those tokens are and what they're being kind of positioned to do is really important before you convert your dollars, because you are making a bet. You are taking a chance. No different than you take a chance on stock when you buy that on a public company, on the New York Stock Exchange, right? You're still taking a chance, and you're expecting that you're doing business with legitimate, trustworthy people.
Yeah, man. The more we talk about this, the more I realize how little I know.
Yeah, it's a whole rabbit hole in itself, Cody. It really is. And there's a lot
um,
going on in the world.
so I don't even know if this is something that could be answered on this podcast and the time that we have. But like, is there anything that you would recommend, a process to go through, maybe due diligence, whatever it might be, for a person who wants to invest or convert or purchase crypto? I mean, what do you recommend for this? Like, if a
Um,
person just wants to get into this area.
Yeah, do some research first. There's
Hmm.
actually a couple, and there's some really great authors that I really love the work that they're doing. So I had brought a couple of books that I thought I could share just to kind of give you, like,
Sure.
some foundational. There's a gentleman, there's actually a pool of authors, a whole team. There's like, what is this, 8 of them that wrote Thank God for Bitcoin, right? And this is really breaking down the creation, corruption, and redemption of money story. We just talked about a lot of that. So thinking about the central bank, there's another book called, and I love this one. This one's got more of a spiritual background to it, but it's called The Economic Awakening. This one is really talking about exchange of value from a human perspective. And, if we think about creation, and we live on this planet, and we have all of these resources available to us, and a lot of people are questioning, why am I paying for certain things when we all have access to this abundant planet? And so the economic awakening is really pulling people back into that spiritual balance of figuring out you are the source and store of your value. And we're trying to build a thing, we're trying to build a world and a community. And how do we do that when there's systems that have been less than trustworthy doing
Right.
that, right? And then the last one that I love, and this is a young author, and he's created what we're going to be taking into the community for a teaching aid called Bitcoin ABCs. And I love this one because he literally broke it down to the letters of the alphabet. We learned our ABCs when we were young. We memorized them, right? We've got a
Mhm.
whole new vocabulary to learn, and you don't just jump into it. It's like going from English of money to Spanish of money or Portuguese. You're learning a new language. You have to give yourself time to really practice and learn that language before you just jump all in. So I would have those recommendations is do some research, do some reading, and then number 2 is only in like acquire cryptocurrencies that you can afford to lose because you don't understand it yet.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And talking about crypto.com, and there might be more than crypto.com, I don't know, but I know that if you go on there, it looks literally like like the stock market. I think they actually have stocks on there.
They do.
And you see the graph of up and down and stuff, and you see the ones for like, the pennies, like the $0.01, that you can buy. Uh, I just don't know, man. I think, I guess maybe Bitcoin was one of the first ones, and maybe that's why it did so well, you know.
Bitcoin has a community though. Bitcoin started out as a development, concept with a mission. The white paper of 2008 written by Satoshi Nakamoto had a
Mhm.
mission and a purpose. And when that's the first thing I always ask people, have you read the white paper? Do you understand what the mission is of this coin? Do you understand how they're going to build real human community? What is their project going to do for the community and the world around them? What are they building for? You don't just build a giant apartment building to sit in downtown, of a metropolis without intending to fill that apartment building, right?
Right.
So, same thing. What are they building for?
Well, that's a good point. That's a good point. Um, do you think, so do you get involved at all? Because having this conversation, I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask this with gold and silver. Do you go down that road at all with anything as far as like people investing? Because people are saying crypto is going to be the next thing. People are going to say, people are saying we're going back to gold and silver. And I don't know if you've seen the stock of gold, recently, but it's I think it's like over $4,000 an ounce or something, or 4,000. It's up there.
Yeah, again, we're coming at it from an emotional place. What is it that you're trying to, why do you want to buy gold? Why would you want to buy silver? Why would you want to buy Bitcoin? What are you trying to protect or to preserve?
Right.
And I'm not a financial advisor. I'm a financial technologist, and I get to the why of why you're doing a thing. And if we're doing, anything that has a tangible value like gold or silver or houses, I'm so far into my blockchain journey that I know we're going to be tokenizing real estate. We're going to be putting revenue centers that are business, real world assets, RWAs, real world assets will be going on chain. And why will we do that? Because we can have proof of economic activity. United Arab Emirates is already doing this with their real estate in the commercial space. We sold a house here in Gulfport, Florida, several years ago as an NFT. It's a proof that an asset can be converted on chain and then can reach a broader liquidity pool of people that are willing to buy something in that digital marketplace. So, but gold and silver, if you want to hold something tangible, you want to, it's like I would say, I'm going to invest in copper. I'm going to
Mhm.
invest in salt. I'm going to buy oil. Those are real world assets, and they now have a digital representation to them.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I really think that's what it comes down to, man. It's just that tangible thing, that sense of security. Like, because I think that we've already talked about it. The fiat currency, everybody can sense that its time is limited.
Yeah,
It's not
we're
going to
getting
be.
ready to evolve. Our systems are getting ready to evolve. I've been through or two evolutions already in my career. And the first evolution was in the 90s. I'm going to date myself here a little bit, but in the 90s, I was inside of a bank and a credit union position. And we moved from writing checks and we introduced the check card, which is now the debit card that we all use, right? And it was a magnetic stripe card, We had an ATM card and we had the check card that replaced the ATM card. The next evolution from that was we went to the chip card in the 2000s, right? You guys remember that? You're probably old enough to remember it shifting to now instead of swiping your card, you're going to dip your card or you're going to,
Hmm.
insert your card into the machine. That was another evolution of technology. Why did we do that? We did that to shrink out the fraud that was happening because people were counterfeiting those magnetic stripe cards and they were cloning them and using them fraudulently. The
Hmm.
industry had to respond. The chip card, at the time that we brought it to the United States, was 20 years old already. It was
Well,
created 20 years before over in other countries, and the US was the last country to bring it in. It was a huge project to get that rolled out. And then a few years later, they were still counterfeiting or bypassing the chip card in e-commerce. So transactions online could be counterfeited. You were just entering the card number and the information on the card. So people were still stealing information, right?
mhm.
Anything of value is going to be stolen at some point by someone who has a need and they're trying to fulfill a need. And so this is why I talk about this way, because that evolution brought us to Apple Pay and Google Pay, right? We were trying to squeeze out more fraud, more theft of people's money using technology. Blockchain and cryptocurrency is no different. It's just an
Yeah.
evolution.
Yeah, I'm about to get those books from you. I'm about to go to Amazon and get those books
Yeah.
because, dude, I'm telling you, man, it's like I don't know, it's so. I mean, I think just like the normal person, I want to have that. Like, I want to know what's going on so that I can, be in the know. But then I want the sense of security. But then also, too, I mean, I think there's a little bit of, I guess, I don't know. There's, well, I think we all feel the fear in several different ways, but it's like the fear of not knowing about this thing, like not knowing, like this is obviously a huge thing, and it's like AI is here, it's not going anywhere,
Right.
So, um, so I think we all sort of have, I mean, it's not even an obligation or a responsibility. I think it's farther than that. I think we sort of we're at the point where we should know about this thing. And I don't know if they're gonna at some point maybe institutionalize the education about this, like teach it in
Right.
public school systems. I'm sure they would, which I say that, but you don't really learn a lot about money in public school anyway.
Yeah, there has to be a lot of people willing to figure it out, to learn it,
Hmm.
and then to teach it, right? That's a whole digestive process. You got to take the information in so that you can understand it, connect the dots, and then regurgitate it and share it with other people. There's not very many people that are doing that. And in my community, as I sit down with a high school, and they're all talking about economic development, they're teaching entrepreneurship to students and to teacher or to young adults that are graduated high school. My question to them is, why are you continuing to teach them about a checkbook and a debit card when tomorrow they're going to go to Cash App or to Venmo or to PayPal and they're going to see this opportunity to buy Bitcoin?
Hmm.
Where is that education?
Yeah.
And so that is where, to be relevant and to help our kids and our young people keep up with, even our, existing business owners, that's what I advocate for. Is I've created my own curriculum that I can at least break it down simply because I've been through those other evolutions of technology and I see what's coming. And
Hmm.
I'm trying to help the community that is responsible for that education you talk about, that we expect to be there, to get ready for it. So it's a getting ready to get ready, if you will.
Yeah. Well, I think the education system is next. We're talking about the financial system now. I think the education system is long overdue for,
Yeah.
some remodeling, and so the adaptation of or the adapting of, new, what I guess, direction, I guess. Because it's crazy, like in education, and I talk a lot about this on this podcast, but like in the education system, we are taught to perpetuate the sort of the system that we live in, but not maneuver through it. Like we don't learn, at least I didn't, where I was, where I was at. And I think this is a common thing. We don't learn much about taxes at all, or much about money or debt. Taxes and debt, I think, are like a big source of problems, financial problems for a lot of people. And we don't learn about that, and at least the base. And I'm not saying it has to be, a college degree, in finance. I'm just saying the basics of it, because we mentioned way back in earlier in this podcast, a lot of us are not we don't have we're not brought up in those spaces, in those homes where sort of this education is, maybe our parents either don't know about it or they fear it. I've talked to a bunch of people on this podcast, and it seems like one of the things that people, like some families, do is like finance is only talked about between the parents, and I guess in a certain degree it should be, but it's like the education is not sort of they don't educate the children like about the finance. And I know some homes it is, some homes it's not. It's a spectrum, it's to certain degrees. But a lot of us don't have that education as teenagers or whatever it is when we're in high school to know about that. So I just think if we had in it the institution, the educational system that helped us with that, maybe we would be better off as adults and we wouldn't max out credit cards at 19 years old. I mean,
Yeah, and I go back to if we were taught how we were designed to handle and make decisions and to build trust. And that's why
mhm,
have invested so much time and energy into what I call love and authenticity, understanding ourselves, understanding our individual design so that we can optimize that design and navigate life differently. Nobody teaches us that. So, how do we get that into the households, and along with all of the wonderful spiritual teachings, maybe there's some life skills. These are all part of life skills, but if we don't persist that through, and there's a lot of reasons for why that doesn't happen, Cody, right? There's things that get disrupted in emotional relationships and family systems kind of get changed, or the environment changes and you move, and we're running on a hamster wheel trying to survive and to pay for things and to just keep the roof over our heads, right? All of that is a very emotional journey. We have to find a way to make room for this infrastructure of learning. It's, a teacher told me just a couple of weeks ago, she's teaching children in class to kind of build a small mock business. But because technology has sped up their learning and kind of augmented how they learn, that executive function is actually depleted. They don't have that critical thinking because
mm,
technology has done everything for them. So, how do you learn to critically think and break things down so that you can be discerning and make educated, informed decisions? Money
mhm,
is no different. The systems have made money so invisible. And, I take part responsibility for that because that was part of my career is I was part of the Apple Pay and making these money systems move so fast so that we could just consume, consume, consume without really questioning, guys, when are we going to teach all of this? How are we going to
right.
teach it? And, so now I guess that's part of me trying to correct that course and going back into the communities and saying, how do I help you fill the gaps? How do I help you
Mhm.
plug the holes of where we went too fast?
Yeah, that's such a good way to say that because I think that's my problem. My biggest problem with AI is that potentially it could take away the critical thinking, um, from us. But look, I want to be respectful of your time. It's been great talking to you today. I do want to well, before I ask you that, do you have a website or a social media or anything you want to share?
I do. I have my nonprofit is inspireworldfoundation.org. Me personally, as a consultant and a coach and a teacher for all the things that I really spent time talking about, is at conniedavisspeaks.com. And there's classes. I have my calendar there. I make things very affordable. I'm not a high ticket coach at all. I would rather democratize this learning and make sure that everybody can come with us where we're going. So those
Mhm.
would be my two websites as far as getting in contact with me. And then I'm on LinkedIn under Connie Davis and Facebook. I have some Facebook groups and stuff. So thank you for asking.
Okay. Yeah, sure. So one thing that I ask everybody before we close, the name of the podcast is the Pure Wisdom Podcast. This just kind of goes with the theme of wisdom. If you could share one of the most important lessons you've ever learned, it can be from your career, either in finance or now. It could be from your personal life if you're comfortable sharing it. What do you think is one of the most valuable lessons you've ever learned?
Oh, I would tell you that um, I've said it before, trust is subjective, right? And what we grow up with and understanding as a teenager, and a lot of the times for me, probably the biggest aha moment was the Disney movies, the Barbie dolls, all of the little fantasy things that we play with, when we create those little mini worlds when we're around us, as it doesn't follow us into adulthood unless we learn how to manifest that for ourselves. So unless we learn to understand and sit in the emotional gaps and really draw into our strengths. That nobody teaches us how to do that though. And so
Mm,
that is what the biggest lesson was when they say nobody's coming to save you, you are the person that saves you from those emotional gaps. And when you feel that contrast. And so Barbie dolls weren't my friend. They created a fantasy and a bubble life that I had to break out of, and I had to figure out my own resilience to save myself and to save from the depths of all that, deep thinking and overthinking and, the way that we kind of create this reality that we look out at the world through. Those are
mhm,
our lenses, and we have to upgrade those lenses. So that's what I've really learned.
mm. Yeah, so, man, that makes me think, excuse me. I know, like, as a kid, I was, me and a bunch of my friends, we were the GI Joe,
Yeah.
soldiers or whatever. Like, we would play with those things as kids. And as I grew up and as we had different celebrities, sports figures or whatever that we admired. And I think one of the reasons that we admire these people, or like with the GI Joes, with the soldiers in the movies or whatever it was like the traits that these people had. Like, we admire those traits about these people. And I think, like, one of the beautiful things about it is that we can build those things for ourselves. We don't have to admire that from afar. Like, we can become, that soldier or that business person or whatever it is. Like, we can learn those traits about ourselves and apply that and build that for ourselves. And I think that's like the one of the beauties of life is that we can sort of create that story for ourselves. We don't have to stay on the sidelines. We can actually be in the game.
We can, and that's why I mean, the podcast show that I have is called Unlocking Commerce in Business, right? And that's why I said the business is just a shell without us. So
Mm,
we are the creators. We are the co-creating with the universe around us and creating life as we want it to become, right? We have to become that version of what we see in our dreams. And so these little GI Joes and Barbie dolls kind of gave us a dream of
right.
what we wanted to see, but we had to make it happen. And we had to become that version to actually make that. But the gaps are what get us distracted, that pull us
Mm,
off of that path. And if we can't stay true to purpose and what actually the values that we cherish, right, or that we admire, those are in ourselves. We just have to
right.
bring them out. And that's
Yeah.
a big part of what I do with unlocking the essence of who we are, the authentic self, so that we can go be that, abundant, life loving person and not be stuck
Hmm.
in traps.
Yeah. One thing I've always asked people to sort of visualize, if you can think about a past version of yourself and a future version of yourself, and you're all walking in a line, they're on either side of you, and you're holding hands with both of them, like, let's say a child version of you and a future version of you that you admire and respect. Like, what connects the two is you're the bridge between the two. So it's like, what you do now to make those dreams happen for that, younger version of you, it happens through you. And when you mentioned the gap, that made me think of that. Like,
Yeah,
this sort of the gap between, who you were and then who you admired. I mean, it happens through you. It happens through you. I don't know how else to say it other than it happens through you.
that's exactly how, and you're the only one that bridges that gap, right? You
Right.
have to bridge yourself. And the gap is we learn in the temperament methodology that I teach is it's the great anxieties that are present and how do you reconcile those? How do you recalibrate and bridge those gaps to get you to that future person that you're holding hands with? So I love that. It's a beautiful analogy. And I use the analogy of if I'm in the car and I'm driving the car, where am I going to steer? Where am I going? Am I just drifting into another lane of traffic and going to crash?
Right.
No, our brains won't allow that unless we truly give it permission to do that.
Yeah. Listen, it's been great talking to you. I'm gonna let you get out of here. I do want to be respectful of your time. If you can hang out for just a second, I'll explain to you the upload. But it's been really good conversation with you today.
You betcha.